This is such a huge privilege for TIP TV to be able to welcome Stephen Kelly, the CEO of the Sage Group, as our first Chief Executive interview. Stephen comes from a background of experience in business, both in the private sector and the public sector, that I am hugely envious of. He's been enormously successful, and I want to start off, Stephen, if I may, of saying welcome to start with. And can I ask you initially that the last CEO job you had before you became, or should I say run, the Cabinet Office for Francis Maude, you were at Micro Focus.
Yep.
And hugely successful. The small companies it was then, but it did extraordinarily well. Then you go into the public sector. Why?
Well, likewise, it's a real privilege for me to be here, David, with two luminaries of the City of London and someone who has got just amazing experience and a fantastic reputation.
That's nice of you.
So it's a real honour for me to be here, David. I really appreciate the opportunity. So I went into government because obviously I thought I'd had two very successful chief executive for public companies, one in the US, a NASDAQ company, and then, as you say, Micro Focus. And I thought, given what the country's problems were at the time with the massive deficit following the credit crunch, there was a real opportunity for people from the private sector with good operational experience, good business experience, to make a material difference to the public sector and ultimately try and change the civil service to become as efficient or on that path to efficiency as it is in the private sector. And during that time, I was very privileged to work with people like Francis Maude, Danny Alexander, a lot of great people right across government, Sir Jeremy Hayward. And I think the team we pulled together did an incredible job, many of them unsung heroes. And the net result of that, effectively from a cost point of view, we took about £20 billion of savings from just the central government piece. So, how that equates and why it matters, that's equivalent to about 1 million junior nurses' salaries for a year. So it really made a difference. It got it a lot more efficient. It drove the digital revolution in government, things like, HMRC and online tax returns and all the stuff around DVLA and abolishing the paper in cars. So we made a difference, and I think it's definitely the way people's careers should work in the future, where you rotate between the private sector and the public sector, because ultimately you want the efficiency to really drive up right across business. And I think one of the strategic issues this economy faces is the productivity issue, and we've got to really tackle that head on. And that's all about capability, experience, and then obviously changing systems, processes, and really upgrading the people.
I think one of the things that inspires me with what you've achieved is the ability to communicate. Because you say to take £20 billion, off the system, for want of a better expression, when the civil service is not the easiest place to deal with, and you've got to balance it between government, get their cooperation and actually achieve it.
Yeah.
And then you go to Sage Group, which we'll cover in a minute when Simon comes in and asks some questions. And the irony for me is, of course, that technology, which somebody of my age is 1 million miles behind the curve, but it's so important for business, industry and commerce. Yet, for me, using the spectrum of technology is something that dampens down the level of communication, which I think is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
So when you decided you'd done your stuff at the Cabinet Office and obviously got offered the opportunity to join Sage, did you manage to bring some of that experience of what you'd had to do? Because the Graham Wiley dynasty, for want of a better expression, obviously changed because he's been gone now, 10 years now?
Yeah.
And tell me how it worked.
So again, I thought a fantastic opportunity and a privilege to work in Britain's largest technology company and a fantastic company. And the connection with small and medium business, because essentially the entrepreneurs are the small and medium businesses who power this economy, create 2/3 of the jobs. That was something I couldn't resist, and I found it quite intoxicating to have that opportunity presented to me. So I also have found in my career, there's probably 3 fundamental things that drive an organization to success. One is really a clear leadership. Secondly is the alignment, so everybody is connected with a mission and is clear with a sense of purpose. And then culture. Culture is fundamental. to having a vibrant organisation that's happy to fail fast but move quickly and really serve its stakeholders well. So what we're trying to do back in the government days is reconnect ourselves to the stakeholders, the citizens, the taxpayers, the ministers of the day, and every meeting, every moment of the day, just reconnect ourselves to how we make a difference to the stakeholders that we serve. It's exactly the same with Sage. And I saw a fantastic company, a great brand. Obviously in this country is just the case, it's incredible, that 53% of all businesses pay their employees using Sage. So we're part of the DNA of the economy. And we survey a lot of our customers, find out what their issues are, what the inhibitors for growth are, what the roadblocks they face are. So we can act as a real champion of small and medium business, a real voice of entrepreneurship in the UK. And I think that platform, as well as these guys, they work, as you know, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. 70% of them have used their life savings or family money to fuel their businesses and really pursue their dreams. So this is very personal for all our customers. It's more than a job, it's a way of life. It's their whole raison d'etre. And sometimes they pass their business down to the next generation. These guys deserve awesome technology. And you're right, I think as an industry in technology, we've historically taught gobbledygook. And we've got to just clearly say, what do businesses love? They want to grow, they want to be successful, they want to manage their cash flow, they want to navigate through the red tape and bureaucracy as easily as they can do, but they want technology that allows them to grow and support their business. They didn't choose to be technologists, so we've got to make technology very easy and translate it. Just as consumers, we all use smartphones, and for the first time in our lives, technology serves human beings. And in our job in Sage, that's what it's all about, getting technology to be incredibly awesome, totally intuitive, and allow entrepreneurs ultimately to run their business from the palm of their hand, so they've got all the control they need to grow and be successful.
Wonderful raison d'etre for the business. Simon, come on then with your questions. Which
Thank you,
very
David.
important.
Stephen, I want to go into the details of Sage, because this is a company, since you joined, that has been a bit of a shareholder darling. It's managed to return 80% shareholders since your appointment. 44% is the comparator for the tech industry in the UK, 9% for the FTSE All Share. So it's clearly performed well. For people watching this show who are not on your shareholder register, have they missed the boat? What's still to come?
I think we've got a very clear strategy that we communicated to investors at the Capital Market Day just about a year ago. But certainly Steve Hare, my CFO, and myself, we just feel we're at the start of the journey. And we feel there's plenty of opportunity ahead on the adventure for Sage. So obviously shareholders have the choice and exercise their choices wisely. But we certainly feel there's a long road ahead of us.
And as part of that, you've taken a stake in Faresale, 21% stake. Can you talk me through that? Sage, historically, up until 2014, very acquisitive firm, been fairly quiet since your tenure. Is that the sense of you looking at the marketplace, looking at valuations? What did you see with Faresale? What's the longer-term view on that business?
It's a good question. Historically, over the 30 years of the company has been very acquisitive. What we found when I joined the company, it was similar in many ways to what government was, very fragmented, very different systems. Just to give you an example, to do our reports, we had to consolidate data from 105 different management databases to be able to report our earnings. We had 21 different CRM systems, we had 139 different offices. We just had massive fragmentation in the business. And therefore, that was an inhibitor, because it allowed us now, through what we're doing in the transformation, to really focus on the market and the customers and provide them awesome technology, and for us to have a very efficient back office. And we're on that journey. So priority number one, to directly answer your question, was to fix the mothership, make sure we were really efficient, make sure we were building awesome technology for the customers we serve. And I think we're well on the path to that through the transformation we expressed at the Capital Markets Day. However, we'd always look at acquisitions and we'd look at partnerships as a real enabler to accelerate the strategy. And that's definitely the case. But I think we had our hands full. We're still pretty much where we wanted to be on the transition. And as we go forward, we'll see ourselves looking in the marketplace and seeing what opportunities are out there to accelerate the strategy. Faresale is a great example of a partnership that we've taken an investment in that company. But as well as that, we are creating literally hundreds of partnerships every year. And one thing we've built is something called the Sage Marketplace, which is similar to the Apple App Store, where, if you're a hotelier, say down in Margate, you can go in there and have a booking system, a reservation system, and it's all integrated to Sage Live, which is the accounting, which runs the digital heartbeat of your business. So we believe with the Sage Marketplace, there's kind of a showcase of incredible apps built on a cloud platform that allows businesses to basically have completely customized apps, just as you have with your personal apps, whether it's Runtastic or Spotify and all these sort of things. You know, for a construction company, for a hospitality company, for an event management company, for a digital marketing agency, they'll all have different needs for what their apps are. And within the Sage Marketplace, we can provide basically an ecosystem that brings those all together, integrates them all, so they don't have to worry about technology, but they get awesome apps that actually power their business.
I want to ask a question, a mutual colleague of ours, George O'Connor, one of the best tech analysts out there in the city, a colleague of ours at Pamela Gordon. One of the things he talks about a lot is the challenge of a technology firm that has both a legacy business and tries to deliver growth.
Yeah.
And we've seen with Hewlett-Packard, they've actually split the company up into two entities. Is that something you see the future for Sage, the future just generally in the technology space in the UK, having to manage legacy businesses, provide customer delight to your existing customers, your loyal customers, but also be at the very cutting edge of growth and opportunity? You talk about Sage Live, Sage 1, X3, there's the growth parts of your story. How much of a separation is there?
Well, I think it's really important, again, that back to David's point, that technology companies never become invasive for their customers. So a clear statement I made when I joined is we'd have no forced migration for customers. So if customers are happy with their current system with Sage and it's doing what they need it to do, does what it says on the tin and allows them to get on with their business, fantastic. We're not going to say we're going to stop end of life in it or we're going to stop support on that. We'll continue to support them and make sure they're whole and they can focus on what's important to them, which is growth, employing more apprentices and winning in the market. However, we do believe there's an incredible opportunity, what we've seen in consumer technology around smartphones and apps, to give the very best applications technology delivered for entrepreneurs on the move, so they run their business from the palm of their hand. And that's what we've invented with the cloud platforms, and some of the products like Sage 1, as you see, is growing by 100% per annum. So incredible growth on some of the very exciting cloud accounting solutions. But we believe we can actually give customers a path from yesterday to today to tomorrow and do that in a very non-invasive way and make sure that we allow them to really focus on what's important, which is their business success and their growth. And we take care of all the technology issues. Just as I think the biggest element, if you talk to our customers and why they chose Sage in the first place, whether it's 10 years ago or today, is trust. And we keep them compliant, keep them safe, they can sleep well at night, and we manage all the key things in their business, income, assets, and expenses. And the technology should be non-invasive, but they should work the way they want to work, rather than them being a slave to technology.
So you seem to attach huge importance to bedding a new acquisition down seamlessly so that it just goes into the company.
Absolutely.
And nobody notices it, apart from the fact that you're a lot more efficient.
Absolutely. And actually just Faresale's an example of a partner, but it's the case, David, exactly that point. It does human capital management, so it looks after your people resources. And it's very much targeted to things like consultants, companies, and people who have a high focus in terms of their cost base on people. But it totally integrates to the accounting, and if you're doing project costing, it integrates to that. So it brings it all together and allows you to seamlessly to collect cash, manage your cash flow, which is the lifeblood and the fuel of many of these small businesses, and they need to do that more efficiently. And we can bring all that together, and through this Sage Marketplace, create literally thousands of applications. So we fit like a glove in every vertical market. And it's not always us, it's through the partnerships we create.
And one of the things that I know you're very passionate about is showcasing this to your customers, to your loyal customers. Sage Summit coming up later in the month. For those people who can't make it out to Chicago, and pity those people, what are they missing out on? What is this the opportunity for you as a company to tell your customers?
Well, it's incredible. It's a great question, and we're really excited. It's just coming up in 10 days' time. And the reality is, David, again, Simon, 2/3 of the jobs in Britain are created by small and medium businesses. Pick up the paper every day. It's about JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. It's about all the big companies. But the guys who are the powerhouse of the economy, the guys who are working 70 hours a week, get no mention in the papers. We love you guys, Pamela Gordon, because you've got a real focus on these successful entrepreneurial scale-up companies and unicorns, which is the engine room of the economy. So this is the largest entrepreneurs conference in the world. We'll have 15,000 people in Chicago. It's Sage Summit. We have 30 countries represented. There's about 300 tracks of both education and also how do you get finance, how do you grow your business, how do you go overseas, how do you export. So really useful content and mentorship where they can get a lot of value, as well as inspirational speakers. So Sir Richard Branson is up on the stage with us, and some really big personalities like Gwyneth Paltrow, Ashton Kutcher, Zooey Deschanel, who have actually started business, so they've got real life experience. And we'll be running something similar to a Dragon's Den, Shark Tank. So there's just incredible speakers. There's huge inspiration. We did a similar conference last year in New Orleans, and the buzz, the energy, the passion. And then we've got literally 50,000 people there, 2,000 partners. We've got a lot of people who are startup entrepreneurs, as well as people who have been experienced business people over 20, 30 years. So I think it's just a great forum, a hotbed for really entrepreneurship, and Sage is right at the heart of that. So if you can be there, come to Chicago. We're still taking registrations. But if you can't, join us on the live stream, because the live stream's available, and people like Sir Richard Branson and the keynotes will be available for the live stream. It will be unbelievable.
That's great. Your passion for small and medium-sized businesses comes through in almost every role in your career. At this point, and I just want to cover something that investors can't get away from at the moment, which is the prevailing political mood post the referendum. What's the role for businesses? I notice you've been very vocal around them being on the front foot in terms of positivity, not talking down the UK economy. But there's clearly a challenge that we're all going to face, whether we're in politics or business or just householders out there. What's your take on it? If there was a message that viewers can take away from how you see British business approaching this, what would it be?
Yeah, again, if we sit back and we speak, I guess, for a nanosec on behalf of Britain's PLC, UK PLC, two structural issues. One is productivity, which we touched on. The other big issue is the balance of payments deficit. So running at, 7% of GDP, a record since records themselves began in 1955. What do we need from an economic point of view is probably a cheaper pound. So the only thing that's materially changed, in the last 4 weeks from pre-vote to post-vote is sterling's now 8% cheaper in dollar terms than it was 4 weeks ago. That's actually good for exporters. It's great for inward investment in the UK. It's actually pretty good for companies that report in sterling and sit on the public market. So in terms of earnings, positive. In terms of export, positive. And what the economy probably needs to kickstart a really strong sustainable recovery is an export-led recovery. So I think when I sit back here and look at the reality of what's happening in the real economy, there's a lot of positive signs that I see, particularly in terms of what's happened to sterling. The other factor, when we go and talk to our customers, reality is in the last 4 weeks, actually forget the newspapers, forget the politics, and forget most of the politicians leaving the field of play. Nothing's really changed. They're still getting up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock every morning. They're still looking at growth plans. They're still looking at how do they export. And actually, if they are exporters, this is a golden era potentially for the UK with a lower cost country. I think every country in the world would bite your arm off for a lower currency. So for us, looking at the small and medium businesses, I absolutely think there's a lot of opportunity out there. The sentiment is really important, and we've called very publicly for our politicians to sort of stop the narrative around the sky's falling in, because business needs to carry on. I think there's a real sense of a narrative that's more optimistic and positive, and we take advantage of the situation we find ourselves in. So both for larger companies like ourselves, but most of all our customers, because they are the pulse of the economy, I think there's a lot of reasons to be positive. And if you look at companies up in Doncaster and Grantham, they're carrying on very much as they were 4 weeks ago, 4 months ago, or even 4 years ago.
And just as we start to wrap up, I want you to take a step back perhaps from Sage for a moment and look at the UK technology space right now. What's the state of the nation when somebody looks at it versus the obvious comparator in the United States, which you have personal experience of, but also in Europe?
Or Israel, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, somewhere growing with great innovation. Where do we sit? What can we do better?
Yeah, I think, there's two things I'd say. I've been in technology 32 years. I've seen more innovation in the last 3 years than probably the previous decade. This is a golden period. We are genuinely sitting at the ringside seat of history. We're very lucky. Fortunately for Sage, we're on the stage creating that history. I think for very much the UK, this is a golden opportunity. Now, 1.5 million people are employed in the technology industry in Britain. We can see that growing. We love to see Sage as a poster child within the industry, the largest tech company, obviously a FTSE 60 company, but we would love to see those thousands of startups in technology from Shoreditch, Old Street, right across Manchester and places like Newcastle, where we sponsor things like Campus North, to similarly fuel startups and mentor a lot of young businesses, see and look at companies like Sage and companies like Arm and say, wow, we want to be like that, and have a huge growth in terms of the employment and the innovation. Because I think, again, from the UK's point of view, we've got to develop and be really number one in industries that are strong on IP and very defendable industries with significant barriers. Technology is absolutely one of those. And I think, again, in the UK in the last 5 years, and actually credit to the previous government and the current government, in terms of this is probably one of the best places to start a company, from the tax treatment, EIS and all those sort of elements, and especially technology companies with elements like kind of investment box, patent boxes, these sort of things. So it's a great place for technology companies at the moment. There's a lot of skills, there's a lot of talent coming out of universities. You look at places like Israel, you look at California, you tend to get an ecosystem where it's very tied to the supply side of talent and skills. And I think for the UK, we could definitely see technology growing beyond the 1.5 million jobs. And if Sage can play a really active and positive part in that, we're totally up for it.
And as this is a CEO interview, I've got to ask you the personal question on your personal future. And many in the city who have seen your performance since November 2014 will hope you stay at the helm. What is the future for Stephen Kelly?
Yeah, I love being what I'm doing. You know, gosh, luckiest guy alive. Love technology, love Britain. To be leading the largest technology company in the UK with a tremendous future, innovating for our customers, those incredible heroes of the economy, the small and medium business of the entrepreneurs. Luckiest guy alive, and I absolutely love what I'm doing. So as long as the board and shareholders and all our stakeholders are happy with the performance, we're doubly up for this, and the adventure ahead looks very exciting. I'd say the same on the management team. We're really very focused on execution and delivering performance for all the stakeholders, and very excited about the future.
Fantastic. Stephen Kelly, CEO of Sage, it's been an absolute pleasure having you.
And if I could just say, if you, ladies and gentlemen, haven't been uplifted by that infectious enthusiasm, you never will be. Stephen,
David,
thank you very much.
Privilege for me to be here. Very
Thanks
nice
so much.
to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.